All right, people, you know that sound? It's the Unfiltered Band. It means another episode of Unfiltered. It is episode number 74. I'm entitling this one in an ode to the old Julia Roberts movie, Podcasting with the Enemy. As thank you, Unfiltered Band. I get a chance to welcome him, longtime friend, former teammate, and one of the best in the business and most sincere as well, who's covering the Braves forever over at MLB.com. My buddy Mark Bowman. First of all, man, I'm happy to do this. I was referencing before we got started. I thought we were just going to be like, we could call this two beards, and then I realized you shaved. Except if I shave, then I'm going to look 12, and then I'm really never getting back on TV. So
I was afraid if I hadn't shaved, I'd look about 57. So there's all the gray.
Well, it's all right. After watching these two teams, that's what happens. And
that's right.
I was saying this to you beforehand, but I wanted to, because this episode to me is a bringing together of two fan bases who think that they are polar opposites, and they are much more alike than they think. It is the gatekeeper and the keymaster getting together in Ghostbusters. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. I have enjoyed the hell out of the trumpet trolling, so I gotta start there. How much fun have you had having fun at the expense of the crazy portion of the Mets fan base, which is probably about 85% of it?
Well, I mean, the good thing is I got a text from Andy McCullough one time about a month ago, and he said, I'm going to have to admit, one of the most entertaining things I have right now is just reading the comments under Anthony DeComo's tweets, just because every night it's 6 weeks away, and the Mets fans are panicking with every win, loss, every loss, and the Braves fans the same way. And I guess the one thing maybe there is somebody in the Braves fan base, I don't know, but for Frank the Tank to have become this, just this figurehead for, it's probably, he probably represents what, 3% of the Mets fan? I don't know. You can tell me more, maybe 15, 20. I don't know.
I think that's being too kind. 3 is,
okay,
but it's not 100 like every Braves fan thinks. Put it that way.
But I mean, to see those guys, and of course, Sal Licata obviously created some fodder there back in May when he said the race was over.
That's just a green pea not understanding in this business. You can't do that with any team that early in the season.
You can't. And, I assumed it would be the Mets, but when right before the season started, I said this race would be determined in the final week. And that's exactly where we're heading. And it has been a lot of fun. Yes, it's been fun just to kind of.
Oh, you're trolling him. Oh, come on. You're trolling him. I'm enjoying it. I've had some fun with you on Twitter. I even had to tweet once to try and include you in a tweet just so Met fans understood, no, I know him. He's okay.
Hey, look, I don't think Mets fans hate me as much as DC fans, but I'm going to tell you the story. Back in, I think it was 2017, we had a 3-hour rain delay where there was really no rain. Strasburg, they just didn't want to have Strasburg pitch. He didn't want to pitch. And I said, after 2 hours of this delay, DC fans are waiting for NLCS appearance, Stanley Cup, and rain. Well, they've got their rain, they got their Stanley Cup, and they got their NLCS, but they also still hate me for that. So, hey, look, whatever I say will come back to haunt me in some way, shape, or form. So
that's all right. Steven Strasburg hasn't pitched since, so it's fine. It's no problem.
Right.
Let me, and I want to delve into the teams, but I got to continue this for a little bit. So I want to tell you where I stand, and you know me a long time. I mean, I feel like one of the things about me over the years, I grew up listening to, Russo and France and guys who when you're doing talk radio, they're a diehard fan of a team, and you got to find a way to cover it unbiasedly. And I do that, which is, why I feel like, I've got a lot of friends down here in Atlanta, and even, people who listen who know I'm harder on this team than anybody. I'm the first one to tell you, here's where I stand on the Trumpets. And I want you to tell me if you think this is a fair and rational opinion. Okay. After Hell's Bells, which to me was number 1 with Trevor, and I love Wags. I mean, Billy, I'm not Mo. That was his tune, right? I mean, even I was saying that back in the day. Billy, you got to find a different song.
Yeah.
With Enter Sandman, right? This is the third coolest one that I remember. I mean, when it initially started happening, and the way SNY does this, and it's all theater, like they're a huge part of it. Like the way that they film it from the back, it's really cool. And I was there. I'm in that. Like I totally buy into that. I'm okay with having him there. I actually think it was cool because for people who don't realize, Mark, and I'm sure you know this or read it, it's the first baseball game he's ever been to. The Timmy Trumpet guy. That's cool. Like for us that are baseball. Like people think he's nobody knows who he is, but you see like overseas in Australia, he's performing for like hundreds of thousands of people, right? At like Woodstock, Australia, or whatever the hell that is for trumpets, right?
Yeah.
But that whole thing was great. Met fans have made it terrible. The Mets, to me, didn't do anything wrong with it. It's way better than Who Let the Dogs Out going back in the day, right, with the Baja. It is cool. And to bring it back in the postseason, if he comes live, that's cool. The Met fans have become so obsessed with Contreras coming out to this song and who's allowed. Where are you, honestly, on the initial trumpet thing and then where it kind of went awry? Because I appreciate, respect, and actually am for all the trolling you're doing because it's driving me nuts at this point. But where are you on like the initial, like how you saw the trumpets? Let's get that out of the way from your vantage point.
I mean, I think we saw Diaz come out of the bullpen a few times there, and we're thinking, you don't think anything of it. And then all of a sudden here in August, the Mets come to Atlanta and they hear Contreras come out to that song. And I don't remember which of the TV guys it was, but they kind of said, hey, look, that's they're trolling the Mets or they're trolling Edwin. And all of a sudden you're thinking, that's funny. I mean, I didn't know Edwin had the rights to this song. So, you just have some fun with it. And then you realize it upsets people. And then you just continue poking the bear and just watching the bear dance. And it's a lot of fun.
The bear has danced, I think,
yes.
Plenty. And look, and I think now it gets exacerbated. My favorite part is like here's the saddest part. The last thing on the trumpets. The guy seems like a totally, like, I don't know him at all, but I watched the videos. He seems so grateful and like Timmy Trumpet of like, being in it and nobody knew what the song was. Grateful for Contreras playing it. He said the right things. He's like, I'm happy when Alabama is playing it before the game. I mean, are you kidding me? Like this guy's good for him. I feel bad because he's gotten thrown into it. You got Braves fans ripping this dude on Twitter. All he did was play his trumpet.
Exactly.
He hasn't done anything.
This is an absolute tribute to him because it's like there are just those certain songs when they come on, obviously the Chippers, you went, oh, hey, he's coming to the plate. I mean, this is one of those songs where it just grabs your attention.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's perfect for Edwin to use. It's great for Contreras to use. And let's get 2 outs in the 9th inning one time next week. With Edwin against Contreras.
That's what I want. I want that. Trumpet bowl, if you will.
That's right.
Give me the trumpet. And by the way, so let me ask this before I move forward. So MLB Network put out, I think it was a few weeks ago after this became a big thing. What would be, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but what would be your like closer walkout tune? So I'm going to give you, like, we're about the same age. I'm going to give you what for years mine has always been like, why doesn't a closer use this? And that's Thunderstruck by AC/DC.
Yeah.
Like the beginning of that tune. And like, I'm like, okay, like that would, like, there are like certain songs. Does Mark Bowman have like, do you have a walk up song or like if you're the closer, like, have you thought of like what song gets you like, none of us want to actually, walk very far, but if we have to, like, or run somewhere, like, what's the song that can get your ass out of bed and get you moving?
That's a good one. I'm going to have to say it's more of a country and then
that's all right.
Guys in it too. It's Bottoms Up.
I like that one.
Yeah,
I know it.
Exactly. Now that might not be the greatest, closer entrance. I've always said, why don't you just do that as a 7th inning stretch,
Yeah.
that type of song. But that's probably the one that, go that way. Now, I will say one song that caught my attention when I was in New York last year was Aaron Loop. He had a walk, or his entrance song was it was Country as Hell. In other words, something like he wasn't unabashedly or something country as hell. Anyhow, I'm walking, as you go down those press box stairs and go up into the kitchen. All I hear is if you can't dip in church, you can't dip anywhere. And I'm thinking, here I am
That's my
in
song.
Queens. Here's my song.
That's my song. By the way, why is it always that we're headed to the kitchen?
Yeah,
Mark
exactly.
All right, so let me get to, and I want to hit a bunch of things on the Braves, and then circle back to kind of Braves Mets. How much has we know what these kids have been amazing on this team, what they've done and what they've added in terms of performance, right? Bottom of the lineup, different positions, especially Grissom coming in. Now Albies, still obviously down again, unfortunately, and he's a great player. Would love to see him healthy. How much energy have they added? Like in the midst of, hey, you're like in a run where people don't realize, and you and I do, we've covered it. When you won a championship, that hunger, it's not humanly possible for people who are on that team for it to be the same. You're going from game 7 in a parade and a shortened off season to all of a sudden it's May 8th, right? And you're playing the Marlins. How much do you think those kids are a big reason why everything kicked into gear over that 3-4 month span that's been ridiculous that we're on right now with Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, you look at all of them. Michael Harris, I mean, what he has done has been incredible.
Amazing.
He certainly has brought it. He's quiet. He's easygoing. He doesn't, but he's sneaky funny. He's got a good sense of humor, and just the way he plays the game that brings energy. You've got Spencer Strider, who I don't know if the Braves have, Jason Hayward was great, Freddie Freeman was great, Craig Kimbrell was great, but I don't think the Braves have had any two rookies or any rookies more impactful than Michael Harris and Spencer Strider since probably Chipper Jones in 1990.
Yeah, and Andrew, I think about right in '96 too, right?
Yeah, in '96. Yeah. That you'd have to go back there to find guys that have just completely turned around a season. They put Michael Harris in center field on May 28th. They put Strider in the rotation on May 30th, and we all know what has happened since June 1st. It's not a coincidence. Strider solidified that rotation, and Harris, they brought him up just to make sure the outfield defense was horrible. They just said, hey, come up here, make our outfield defense better. If he hit 210, that's great. Now, here he is hitting 300 plus, and, with the, his pace would be a 30 homer season. It's pretty remarkable what those two guys have done. And then just you throw Vaughn Grissom in the mix, and he's the 21-year-old kid who definitely brings some youthful,
got some swag to him, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's I know he kind of upset Mets fans a couple weeks ago when he said, I thought the Mets were going to draft me, and that would have been horrible.
Yeah, well, that's just because it's overboard and unnecessary, but that's all right. I'm not going to get on him for that. I mean, because you and I both know how it is. It's like, then if he was drafted by the Mets, it would have been like the greatest day of his life. I mean,
Exactly.
Let's be honest, right? It's like, how many guys have we seen, like, they get into Yankee pinstripes and they're at the presser and they're like, I've dreamed of this my whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, and some of it is like, I remember Johnny Damon went to the Tigers. He said he always wanted to play in Detroit, like in the presser. And I remember, I wish I was there asking why. so it's like, half of this stuff, but the energy of the guys is one thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned Strider, right? And I want to go back to, because one point of contention for both fan bases that are watching and listening to this right now was the comments about the lucky and all that stuff. I thought, and I said this on Twitter, because people don't want it. Like, you have to be willing to be wrong and admit it. You also have to adjust as people grow and adjust. I said when he came out and made the comments, he's just a kid, right? And he's got that confidence. And I remember Chipper telling me years ago at a thing I did with him here in Decatur, he said that his dad taught him when he was young about skating the line between confidence and arrogance and how important it is to have a little bit of both, right, to be successful. I had no problem with it. What I said was, teammates probably don't want you throwing bulletin board material up there for no reason. And then the next start that he made against them, he in the presser, I thought, did everything you want a kid to do. He didn't take back what he said, but was more complimentary, more understanding of it. Is that how you saw those two things? Like, I think there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, he's confident and a brash kid. You need that. But there was nothing wrong, I don't think, for people who, like me at least, forget about irrational Met fans, saying, hey, look, teammates usually don't want a kid that age doing things like that and throwing up bulletin board material for a team you're chasing at that time. Is that how you saw that?
Yeah, no doubt. It's one of those things where you say, oh, no. But you know what? most part of the reason he said those things is he was mad at himself. He was somewhat embarrassed. That was a time where he could have, come up big in a big game, making sure that they don't lose 4 or 5 up there. But, I think he was a little bit embarrassed. But it's like you said, the next game, he threw 5 good, solid innings, comes out and says, you know what, I didn't really mean it like that. But at the same time, complimented the Mets. And he kind of did the same thing yesterday. The funny thing, I really like that brashness.
You need it. You need it. You need it.
So he had thrown about a week or 2 before we went to New York, and he made those comments. He comes out of the All-Star break, and here's a kid who threw, 60 innings at Clemson over 2 years. He made 10 starts there at Clemson. He pitched last year as his first pro season. He threw 94 innings or whatever. And so the question's always been, how long can he last? And, we'd write about it. And then, you didn't question him after every start, but comes out of the All-Star break and we question him. He goes, I'm glad you guys are all innings experts. I should have just asked you how long, you liked it. You just kind of smiled and said, here's the 23-year-old kid looking at Dave.
He's not afraid. He's not afraid, Mark.
Yeah. I mean, Dave and I have been doing this job as long as he's been alive here in Atlanta. And he's looking at us and saying, I'll take care of it, guys. You guys don't have to worry about me. And I asked about it again yesterday. And he said, hey, look, I get it why you guys were asking that question. But at the same time, I do have it. I'm going to take care of myself. And it's just that confidence. Like,
you need
I'll
that.
acknowledge, maybe I said something I shouldn't have, maybe it came across the wrong way. But you know what? I want it to come across the wrong way. I want that brashness.
Of course.
That's what you want in that foxhole with you.
Well, look, I mean, some of the greats and, Pedro Martinez. I mean, how many guys do we have that are like, Clemens, right? Regardless of what comes with him. It's like there's a dominant level of a presence that comes with them. I mean, look, the Braves don't always had that because, Tommy and Greg were like 2 of the nicest guys and like just mild mannered. Maddox was like a scientist and like, Tom is just like somebody you wouldn't even know he plays baseball if you're just talking to him. Not everybody plays like and pitches that. Max Scherzer not that way, right? He got some brashness to him. So, and you need some of that to do this and to have that memory like loss thing that we can't understand covering it of how these guys can flip a switch and just forget and come back the same confident way. Plus, with that mustache, you better be confident because you and I cannot. We could not pull that off. I know that. And thankfully, we're much closer now. It's not back to where we were pre-pandemic, but it was difficult, I know, for guys on the beat, much more so than me, to not be in the room, right? And not be around it, all the Zoom stuff. So I know there was a little bit of the last time with Freddie there, not being as close to it as people would normally be. But did they miss Freddie in the room? Do they? I mean, what's the sense you get? Forget about what, because all I hear is Acuna's comments. Everybody made a big deal out of because he shouldn't have said it about wearing eye black or any of that. Just take the high road, dude. In my opinion, right? But he's a kid. Did they miss Freddie in that room or not?
I would say this. Look, I mean, what Freddie was great in that room, but Dansby stepped up. Travis d'Arnaud has stepped up. I think that leadership, looking up to somebody. I think those 2 guys have stepped in and kind of taken that those responsibilities. And it's a shame for Ozzie Albies. He would have kind of been in that mix too. Do they miss him? I think Snit missed him. That was one guy that Snit could pull in the office and just they back and forth just with the player. You get a better understanding of the feel of the clubhouse. I think he can do that with Travis. He can do that with Dansby, but the fact is, you knew a guy for, 15 years, like it was Snit and Freddie, going back to Freddie's earliest days in the minors. So, I mean, I'd say in some way, but at the same time, Dansby and Travis have stepped up, and Matt is a great guy. Matt Olson is
terrific. He's terrific.
Super fit in that clubhouse. So, I'm going to have to say that, you miss having a friend around, but at the same time, other guys have stepped up and done their job and picked up where he left off.
You mentioned Dansby. Everybody talks about, especially, at days like yesterday where, O'Neal Cruz hits the bomb off DeGrom, but, he's got to settle for 86 Ks and 4 walks in 2022, which is just, I mean, it's stupid watching him.
Yeah.
And I know both fan bases are paying attention to his free agency because it is not a secret that he's not necessarily, in love with the New York part of it. And this would be kind of an area for it. We may visit that conversation in the offseason. How about Dansby? I mean, you watch him every day. We've seen how he's grown. I've been from the outside, Mark, so impressed that it would have been easy to tell the story. Overblown pick, shouldn't have been picked there, overblown in the trade. You expected a guy who was going to be such and such in the draft, but he probably shouldn't have been there. Right? All that could have been his tag and hitting eighth, right? And he's kind of pushed through all of that, whether it's, Atlanta or in it, no, okay, it's not, New York or Chicago or Philly, but when you're stigma with that pick, that's a lot of pressure. What have you kind of, gained from learning about what he's all about, and just how imperative is it that they bring him back in free agency?
I do think it would be, it's important to bring him back, and I think part of that is just how much of a leader he has become, how much of a, just when he, I don't, just when he speaks, it's a lot of times in baseball, it's a do as I, and you kind of just do as the other guys do. You kind of follow their lead, that type of thing. But he is that guy that also when something happens and we need to go say, what happened, you go to Dansby, you go to Travis. But Dansby is the guy who truly understands exactly everything about this club, not only from his childhood growing up here, but he got here during the rebuild. He has played a big role in each of the 4 division titles they've won over the last few years. I think that Dansby has continued to grow as a person. He has been one of the game's best defensive players, shortstops for the last few years. He just keeps getting better there. And, most importantly, the past, this year, what he's done offensively, I think that's a sign of what he could do for the next few years as well. From a contract standpoint, what do you do? The thing is, if you would have asked me in May, what do you do with Dansby? I'd say, go ahead and lock him up. He'd had that rough start, but get him 4 years and 65 million. 4 years, $15 million a season. And then all of a sudden he starts hitting like this and he's looking like a $20 million guy. So how do you understand, you appreciate everything he's done, but when his price, it looked like his cost was here in May and now it's here, can you justify that, especially when he's nearing 30? And then you also have to take a step back, not just with Dansby, but any other shortstop who's nearing 30 and say, hey, look, the shift is gone. How much more range do we need? And is that quarter of a step to half step that he loses in between ages 31 to 32 or 32 to 33? How big is that? So there are a lot of questions to be asked. It's not going to be just a slam dunk that he returns, and I'm not even factoring in the Casey Close thing. That's
no, that won't be an issue.
That's not going to. Dansby will take control of this.
Yeah, that's not going to be an issue.
Yeah, this will be all about Dansby. It's not a slam dunk he returns, but I think it is vital that he comes back. I think that, but at the same time, I do understand why there'd be some reservation saying, okay, appreciate everything you've done, but if you were this cost in May and you're this cost in October, how can I justify meeting you somewhere in the middle there?
Here's the good news. The Braves have saved so much money with some of these team-friendly deals that they've got that, as long as it's not Alex, it's the ownership leader, Liberty Media, as long as they understand that and he sells that to them, there should be a big contract somewhere they can give because of how much they've saved over the course of so many of these young players that they've locked up. So we'll see. I enjoy watching him as a player. It's a lot of fun to watch him. In terms of people I don't cover the Dodgers, neither do you, but in all the years that I was around Kenley Jansen, he always impressed me. He's a jolly giant. I mean, he's a big dude. He's such a nice guy. Went through so many issues with the heart and everything else from a health standpoint. To me, the Dodger fans never really respected him the way they should, because Don Mattingly and then Dave Roberts had to put him in 8th innings in the postseason because they didn't have any other bullpen after Kershaw. And just like Clayton, who got left out too long and it hurt his numbers, Kenley was in there too early and it hurt his. This version of Kenley Jansen is not what he was in his peak. How much fear when you see 3 times in 7 opportunities where he blows it here the last couple of weeks? How much is this maybe, the biggest question mark heading into the postseason for this team?
Well, it's certainly a big question mark. And, at the same time, you sit back and say it was the same question mark they had last year before Will Smith miraculously just became a great closer. Now, I don't want to blame Kenley's struggles on pitching back-to-back nights. So it's not like the playoffs are going to be a completely – I can say, oh, you know what, he gets more rest in October and that kind of stuff with the scheduled off days. So I don't think that's the issue. But I'd say right now, what we saw Saturday night with his save, perfect ninth there, that's – if you can get that 4 out of every 5 appearances, that's all you can ask for right now out of him. The good thing is that Iglesias is there if they needed somebody. But, now all of a sudden Yates is out of the picture. Kirby Yates is out of the picture with the elbow issues. Tyler Matzik hasn't gotten back to who he is. So now you've got A.J. Minter, Iglesias, and Jansen. That's your 3 high-leverage guys. Can that work in the postseason? Yeah. Would it be great if Matzik just suddenly started throwing 97, 98 again? Certainly. That's probably not going to happen. But I guess what I'm getting at is you could take Jansen out of that closer's role, but he's got to pitch one of those. He's one of those 3 high-leverage guys. So they're going to stick with him there in the closer's role for now. If it gets to the postseason and, it's an issue, it continues to be a problem over the next couple of weeks, then maybe you make the change. But he's been there, done that. And, when we wrote about him struggling there last week after that blown save in Seattle, a lot of the LA folks were like, here we go again. And they've written that story so many times. So, that maybe he has some struggles down the stretch. But like you said, Kenley is as likable a guy.
Such a good dude. He's such a good dude, Mark.
He's been so accountable every time that we've needed to talk to him this year. You root for guys like that that have had that kind of success. You don't want to see a sad ending to anything. And I don't think he's got enough left in the tank that it's not going to be a complete disaster down the stretch.
I want to circle back now here to closing. You and I were talking about before we got on and I hit record on this that, to me, and I mean this rivalry being back in baseball is great, because it was such a great rivalry in the 90s. It was so amazing. It had so many unbelievable moments. I think about even at this time of year, which is, so unfortunate to have those memories come back, but to be there at 9/20/101. I remember, and everybody's heard it. He said it to me and everybody else, but Chipper saying the only time in his whole life he's ever been okay with losing. There was a hatred, but there was always a mutual respect that came with that is not going to get admitted on either side because it is what it is. The difference is here, and I love Bobby V. Bobby Cox and Bobby V, that might have been real from that standpoint, and nobody hates Buck, so it's a little bit different there, right? And Smith is too nice to hate anybody, probably. So it's a little bit too nice in that category. What's your vantage point watching the Mets this season from? Amidst all the fun and that we have with it, how are they seen down here from a Braves perspective when you think about, either the challenge or the danger, if you will, that they kind of possess, not only in division, but in the postseason as well?
Well, I mean, I think, from the start, it's always, you knew that this was a great team that was not going to, they weren't going to Mets because they weren't going to Mets because Buck was there.
Right.
Buck was going to keep that ship straight.
That's right.
And I think we've seen that. There were a couple of times where, even recently, some of the losses to the Nationals and, some of those recent losses, the ship, kept floating. And I think he's respected. Obviously, that starting rotation is very, that's about as good as it gets.
Formidable.
But
yeah.
Yes. At the same time, the Braves, with Strider's emergence, with Kyle Wright's emergence. These are two great rotations. These two teams are so similar and so
They
so
are,
many.
aren't they?
I will say this: when I left New York in early August after the Mets took 4 or 5, and the Vogelbach and Darren Ruff, that mixing the lefties and righties, I'm thinking, oh my, this is going to work. And who can beat this Mets team? Obviously, that those guys have cooled off, or have struggled since then. But at the same time, I think there's enough, in that Mets lineup to certainly be dangerous enough to support that great pitching staff. I think that there's a lot of respect. Snit loves Jeff McNeil. He got to know him a couple of times, and
it's hard not to. He's like, when we think of like baseball play, I go back to old school, right? And I think like not old school the movie, but like old school baseball. It's like, and then like the Dustin Pedroias of the world, not comparing them as players, but he's just one of these guys, McNeil, who it's like he's just a baseball player. He's not going to look pretty, but he's just getting on base. He's choking up on the bat more than I've seen like a kid in Little League do. Have you ever seen? It's literally like that gap from the bottom. He's just a baseball player.
Yeah, he's likable. I got a funny story. Remember at the All-Star game when Wash was doing defensive drills with Pete Alonso?
Yeah, with Pete. Oh God, Braves fans must have hated that.
So of course, he got a lot of flack in the clubhouse from the guys about that. So remind me what happened. Let's say it was against the Yankees. Did Pete make a big play, a defensive play?
Yeah, defensively he did.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. Anyhow,
people were getting on.
We're in Pittsburgh, and Pete makes a great play or something, and all I heard, it was the game against the Pirates that just ended. You just heard Wash.
And isn't he the best?
So anyhow,
he's
been a lot of fun.
I don't think he's the best too. Wash is the best.
Yeah,
he's the best.
He is. He's super.
He is so the best.
It's a great rivalry. I think it's fun. Fortunately, we don't have to deal with the rocker stuff, no.
Oh yeah. Well, it's not the same. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, that was a whole different thing. And even to be honest, I think now that would have been handled way differently, because when Ozuna came back, Braves fans were booing the crap out of him. I mean, back it's a different world we live in now, where people are like, they're more tied, which is good, I think, in a lot of ways, to what their morals are than what team that they root for. And Rocker, I don't think, would have been accepted the same way after some of the stuff that he said. But it's different, man. Both these teams are going to get in. It's going to be fun. I want to ask you one last one, and this has been something that I've been kind of floating out there. This has been so much about the division for both teams, I think, for their fan bases. But follow me here with this. These teams have killed the Phillies. I mean, the Philly fans must be really on the ledge because they can't beat either of these teams. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
The 5-game series with the Dodgers, to me, is so much easier than a 7-game series. It's why in 2019, Dodgers are heavy favorites. The Nationals go in. It's where when you have Strider right, when you have Scherzer and DeGrom, you could shorten that thing, quiet those bats enough, and on the road or not, go win a game 5 over there. Game 7 is tough, right? Deeper in the bullpens. They got so much depth in LA. What's your take on the fact that the loser of this division is going to get a Phillies team that they're probably going to beat, because that's all these two teams have done with the Phillies all year, and then face the Dodgers in 5 versus in 7, where they're probably going to have to face them if they don't? I'm not saying lose the division on purpose, but I wouldn't be shocked if the loser of this division goes further in the postseason than the winner of this division does.
I mean, you make good points there. I guess my biggest fear is, who do you have lined up after you get through, that final week of trying to win a division, and then you get into the wild card round? Who do you have lined up coming out of that wild card round for those first 2 games of the division series? I think everything, the points you make are good, but I think I'd rather go ahead and sit back for.
Oh, sure. Days. I think you'd rather, but I'm preparing the consolation speech.
I think that's going to be very interesting, though, is how, teams want to win that division. So that, let's say the Mets and the Braves leave Atlanta and the division isn't claimed. Now, what do you do when the Mets or when the Braves go to Miami? Do they stick with those same guys? Do they say, oh, well, either we're going to win the division with Bryce Elder making a start or not, but we need to have the right guys lined up for the
I think they're going for the
series.
Division. They're going I think it's more important for the Mets to win the division because of the age of their pitchers than it is for the Braves.
Yeah. Yeah,
I do. The Mets need that rest for DeGrom and Scherzer because when you have look, if the Mets win, this is not rocket science. It's like Strasburg and Scherzer, who basically beat the Astros by themselves. It's when if the Mets win, those are the two guys who are going to win. That's how they're going to go through the postseason, and you're going to see one of them in an 8th inning randomly out of a bullpen, and one's at a 7th inning. That's how they're going to do it. You need them healthy to do it. I think for the Braves, they're a deep, complete team than I think the Mets are.
Yeah, and
Mets are top heavy.
Yeah, the emergence of these young pitchers, or Strider and Kyle Wright has made a significant difference this year. And to think that if you're lining it up, there aren't whatever everybody's available at the start of the postseason, and Charlie Morton's your number 4, and the kind of postseason experience he has,
not bad.
That's nice.
We're lined up right now for September 30th, right here. DeGrom against Strider opening that series.
Yeah.
And sign me up for that.
Yes, that'll be great because I think if they were online, if they stayed, they could go
they
Strider
do.
in that Wednesday game, but skip him and
that's where it lines up right now for DeGrom and Strider, and give me that. Give me all of that. Mark, appreciate you, man. This was so much fun. Keep trolling the fans with the trumpets and driving them crazy. Just send them my way. It's like free therapy now that I have to give. I appreciate you, man. This will be fun down the stretch.
All right. You take care. This has been a lot of fun.
Stay with us on Unfiltered, the Unfiltered Revolution at Casey Stern, and jump on if you're listening. Continue to subscribe, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts.